Welcome to i-TUTOR IAS Academy Biology NCERT series. Last class we have seen till adaptation. So this is part 2 and we will be discussing from populations onwards. Population attributes. In nature we rarely find isolated individuals of any species. Majority of them live in groups in a well-defined geographical area, share or compete for similar resources, potentially interbreed and thus constitute a population. So we rarely find organisms alone in nature. Usually we find them in groups, they share a similar geographical area, compete with each other and they potentially interbreed. The term interbreed implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals resulting from even asexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. A population has certain attributes that an individual organism does not. An individual organism may have births and deaths, but population has birth rates and death rates. In a population, these rates refer to per capita births and deaths respectively. Another attribute characteristic of population is sex ratio. A population at any given time is composed of individuals of different ages. If the age distribution is plotted for a population, the resulting structure is called age pyramid. For human population, the age pyramid generally show age distribution of males and females in a combined diagram. So this is a age pyramid diagram. The shape of the pyramid reflects the growth status of the population. The shape will show whether the population is growing or whether the population is stable or if it is declining. So just see this diagram, this is an expanding diagram, that means the population is growing. The pre-reproductive aged group people are at a higher number compared to the reproductive and post-reproductive aged group people. So as the time passes, these people will move up and the population will grow. And in case of stable population, the pre-reproductive and reproductive group have the almost same, they are almost same in number, which shows that it has a stable population. While in case of declining population, the pre-reproductive group, that is the young generation, that is a future generation, future citizens or like the future population is in a declining trend. So this is a declining population rate and this shows a stable population rate and this is a expanding population rate. The size of population tells us a lot about the status in the habitat. Whatever ecological process we wish to investigate in a population, be it outcome of the competition with another species, the impact of a predator or effect of pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of change in population size. Moving on, population size, more technically called population density. So population size is more technically can be called as population density, need not necessarily be measured in numbers only. Okay, although total number is generally the most appropriate measure of population density, it is in some cases either meaningless or difficult to determine. Let's understand this with an example. In an area, if there are 200 Parthenium plants, we have seen this in the previous class that Parthenium plant is an invasive alien species that has come to India. So just whenever you see the names, just recollect those points. So consider an area with 200 Parthenium plants and only a single huge banyan tree with very large canopy. So stating that the population density of banyan is low relative to that of the Parthenium amounts to underestimating the enormous role that is played by the banyan tree in that community. In such cases, percentage cover or biomass cover is more meaningful measure of the population size. So we usually measure the population in population density and we have seen why numbers only is not the proper method for measuring in many cases. That is seen with the example of Parthenium and banyan tree. Now moving on to the next portion, population growth. The size of a population for any species is not a static parameter. It keeps on changing in time depending on various factors including food availability, predation, pressure, and the weather changes. It is the changes in population density that give us some idea of what is happening to the population, whether it is flourishing or declining. Whatever might be the ultimate reasons, the density of a population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuate due to changes in four basic processes. Two of them are natality and immigration. It contribute to increase in population density. Another two, mortality and immigration, it contribute to decrease in the population density. Now let's see these four important terms: natality, mortality, immigration, and emigration. Natality refers to the number of births during a given period in the population that are added to the initial population density. Mortality, it refers to the number of deaths in the population during a given period. Immigration is a number of individuals of same species that have come to the habitat from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Emigration is a number of individuals of the population who left the habitat and gone elsewhere during the time period under consideration. So these four factors, these four things contribute to whether, and it determines whether the population is flourishing or declining. Now this is a diagram and it shows this is population density n. This is population density n, and natality causes an increase in the population. This plus sign shows the increase and this minus sign shows decrease. So natality means new individuals are born, and immigration, more individuals are coming in, so this will increase the population density. On the other hand, emigration, that means that species or individuals are moving out, and death or mortality, these causes a reduction in the population density. So there is a this is a diagrammatic representation, and this is an equation which summarizes the diagram, that is nt plus 1. At any point, n is the population density at time t, and it's a nt plus 1 is the population density at time t plus 1. So nt plus 1 is natality, the population density at time t plus the natality plus immigration minus the death and emigration. Okay, now let's discuss the growth models. First growth model is exponential growth. Resource, that is food and space availability, is obviously essential for the unimpeded growth of a population. Ideally, when resources in the habitat are unlimited, each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential to grow in number, as Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection. This population grows in exponential or geometric fashion. Any species growing exponentially under unlimited resource conditions can reach enormous population densities in short time. Darwin showed how even slow-growing animals like elephant could reach enormous numbers in absence of checks. Now let's move on to next type of growth, logistic growth. So it says that no population of any species in nature has at its disposal unlimited resources to permit exponential growth. This leads to competition between individuals for limited resources. Eventually, the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. In nature, a given habitat has enough resources to support maximum possible number, beyond which no further possible growth is possible. Limit as nature's carrying capacity K for those species in that habitat. A population growing in a habitat with limited resources show initially a lag phase, followed by phases of acceleration and deceleration, and finally a asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. So the nature has a limit of everything to provide resources. So beyond that, the organism's population doesn't grow. So the population growing in a habitat with limited resources show initially a lag phase. When we represent it, so initially it will have a lag phase followed by a accelerated initially it will have a lag phase and followed by a accelerated growth and then deceleration and finally a asymptote. That finally the graph becomes stable, the population becomes stable. And now let's move to life history variation. Population evolved to maximize their productive fitness called Darwinian fitness in the habitat in which they live. Under particular set of selection pressures, organisms evolved towards the most efficient reproductive strategy. Some organisms breed only once in their lifetime. Example can be Pacific salmonfish, bamboo trees, etc. While others breed many times during their lifetime, like most birds, mammals, etc. Some produce large number of small-sized offsprings like oysters, pelagic fishes, etc. While others produce small number of large-sized offsprings like birds, mammals like humans, etc. Population interactions. Animals, plants, and microbiomes do not and cannot live in isolation, but in interaction with various ways to form a biological community. Even in minimal communities, many interactive linkages exist. Interspecific interactions arise from interactions of populations of two different species. They could be beneficial, detrimental, or neutral. Neutral means there is no harm or benefit for any of the species. Assigning a positive sign for beneficial interaction and a negative sign for detrimental and 0 for neutral interaction. Both the species benefit in mutualism and both lose in competition in their interaction with each other. In both parasitism and predation, only one species is benefited and the interaction is detrimental to the other species, that is the host and prey respectively. So the interaction where one species is benefited and other is neither benefited nor harmed is known as commensalism. And in amensalism, on the other hand, one species is harmed whereas the other species is unaffected, that is neutral. Predation, parasitism and commensalism share a common characteristic: the interactive species live closely with each other. So whatever we have discussed is summarized in a box and it shows the name of the interaction. We know that the organisms living the population within the population, the species, different species will interact with each other. There is interspecific interaction. So these are named in different names. In case of mutualism, both the organisms are benefited. The plus sign is given for the benefit. When both organisms are benefited, it is known as mutualism. When both organisms are negatively affect, when it is detrimental to both organisms, it's known as the competition. In case of competition, it is detrimental to both organisms. In case of predation, it is advantage or positive for one organism, that is the host, that is for the predator, while it is detrimental for the prey. And in case of parasitism, for the host it is detrimental, for the parasite it is advantageous or it is beneficial. And in case of commensalism, we have seen these two are very important and it should not be confused with commensalism and amensalism. It has to be remembered very clearly without any doubt. So commensalism is when the one of the organism is benefited and other organism is not affected, like it's neutral, it doesn't have any positive or negative impact on the organism. While in case of amensalism, one organism is negatively affected and the other organism is neither benefited nor harmed. So this is a very important table of regarding the population interaction, and especially commensalism and amensalism has to be kept in mind. Let's see each topic separately. Predation. Predation as nature's way of transferring to higher trophic levels the energy fixed by plants. When we think of predator and prey, most probably it is tiger and deer that readily comes to our mind. But sparrow eating a seed is no less than a predator. Besides acting as conduits of energy transfer across trophic levels, predators play a very important role in our ecosystem. They keep the prey population under control. But for predators, prey could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability. So if predators are not there, the prey population, like consider a forest where all tigers are extinct and only the deer species are there. There is enough grass and other vegetation for the deer species. So over a period of time, it will have huge, it will have a huge rise in the population density, which will which will cause a ecosystem instability, because these deers will eat up all the vegetation and eventually these population also will end up being extinct. When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast because they invaded in a land which does not have its natural predators. So we have seen about invasive alien species in the previous classes. This is like when the exotic species is introduced to a geographical area, they become invasive. That the main reason for this is the new land doesn't have the natural predators. The example is Principia catcus. This is a very important example, just keep a note of it. Principia catcus, introduced into Australia in early 1920s, caused a havoc by spreading rapidly into millions of hectares. The invasive cactus was then brought under control by the cactus feeding predator, a moth, from its natural habitat. So, when a Principia cactus was introduced to Australia in 1920s, it spread rapidly and it became an invasive alien species, and it started affecting the indigenous species. Later, the population, this huge number of the invasive cactus was brought under control by introducing the cactus feeding predator that existed in its natural environment. Biological control methods adopted in agriculture pest control are based on the ability of predator to regulate prey population. The predator also help in maintaining species diversity in a community by reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species. In rocky intertidal communities of the American Pacific coast, the starfish disaster is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from an enclosed intertidal area, more than 10 species of invertebrate become extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. If a predator is too efficient and overexploits its prey, then the prey might become extinct, and following it, the predator will also become extinct due to lack of food. This is the reason why predators in nature are prudent. Prey species have evolved various defenses to lessen the impact of predation. Example, some species of insects and frogs are cryptically colored, that is camouflaged, to avoid being detected easily by the predator. Camouflaged means the way in which the organisms or the animal's color or shape matches with the surroundings, and it is making it difficult to get spotted. Some are even poisoned and therefore being avoided by the predator. Example is monarch butterfly. Just take a note of this name. Monarch butterfly. Monarch butterfly is highly distasteful to the predator, which are usually birds, because of a special chemical that is present in the body. Interestingly, the butterfly acquires this chemical during its caterpillar stage by feeding a poisonous weed. For plants, herbivores are the predators. The problem is particularly severe for plants because, unlike animals, they cannot move or run away from their predators. Plants therefore have evolved astonishing way of morphological and chemical defenses against the herbivores. Examples are thorns in acacia, cactus. These are all desert plants. The thorns that is seen are the most common morphological means of defense. Like in case of roses also have thorns. And many plants produce and store chemicals that make herbivores sick when they are eaten. This inhibits the feeding of the plant by the predator. So many plants produce and store the chemicals that make the herbivore sick when they are eaten, inhibit feeding or digestion, disrupt its reproduction, or even kill the predator. An example of that is wheat calotropis growing in the abandoned field. We rarely see any animals feeding on these plants. The reason is the plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycosides, and that is why you never see any cattle or goats browsing on this plant. A wide variety of chemical substances that we extract from plants on commercial scale like nicotine, caffeine, quinine, strychnine, opium, etc. are produced by them actually as the defenses against the grazers and browsers. The second interaction is competition. When Darwin spoke of the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resources that are limiting. But it's not entirely true. Firstly, totally unrelated species can also compete for the same resources. For instance, in the shallow South American lakes, which are visited by flamingos and resident fishes, they compete for the same food, that is zooplankton. So competition is when the organisms compete for the same resources. Darwin said that he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent source of organic evolution, and it is generally believed that the competition occurred between the related species for the limited resources. But this is not actually completely true, because there are competition between unrelated species as well. For example, the flamingos, the bird species and the resident fish species compete for the zooplanktons in the lake in case of South American lakes. Secondly, the resources need not be limiting for the competition to occur. So these two conditions, these are not completely true. Like one is interspecific, it might not be between the related species. Another is when the resources limited. The competition can occur when the resources are not limited also. So in the interference competition, the feeding efficiency of the species might be reduced due to interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if the resources, that is food and space, are abundant. Competition is best defined as a process in which the fitness of one species is significantly lower in the presence of other species. So the above thing can be explained with the example of Abington tortoise in the Galapagos Island. Abington tortoise in Galapagos Islands became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced in the island, apparently due to greater browsing efficiency of the goats. Another evidence of occurrence of competition in nature comes from what is called competitive release. A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of a competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally removed. Cornell's elegant field experiment showed that on the rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacle Balanus dominate the intertidal area and excludes smaller barnacle Catalamus from that zone. In general, herbivores and plants appear to be more adversely affected by the competition than carnivores. Gauss competitive exclusion principle. It states that two closely related species competing for the same resource, cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. This may be true if the resources are limited, but not otherwise. Most recent studies do not support such gross generalization about competition. While they do not rule out that occurrence of interspecific competition in nature, they point out that the species facing the competition might evolve mechanisms that promote coexist rather than exclusion. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. If two species competing for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing. MacArthur showed it with an example. MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers, warblers are a kind of birds living on the same tree, were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Moving on, third interspecific third way is parasitism. Considering that parasitic mode of life ensures free lodging and meals, it's not surprising that parasitism has evolved in so many taxonomic groups from plants to higher vertebrates. Many parasites have evolved to be a host specific in such a way that both host and parasite tend to co-evolve. That is, if the host evolves specific mechanism to reject or resist the parasite, then the parasite has to evolve a mechanism to counteract and neutralize them in order to be successful with the same host species. So, when the host evolves, the parasite also co-evolves so that it is successful with the host species. Parasites evolved special adaptations such as the loss of unnecessary sense organs, like presence of adhesive organs or suckers to cling onto the host, loss of digestive system and high reproductive capacity. So there are certain adaptations that the parasite have evolved. One is loss of unnecessary sense organs, presence of adhesive or suckers so that it can cling to the host body, and loss of digestive system and very high reproductive capacity. The life cycles of parasites are often complex, involving one or two intermediate hosts or vectors to facilitate parasitism of its primary host. The human liver fluke, that's a trematode parasite, depend on two intermediate hosts, snail and fish, to complete its life cycle. The malarial parasite needs a vector, that is mosquito, to spread to the host. Majority of parasites harm the host. They may reduce the survival, growth and reproduction. So most of the parasites will harm the host, affecting its survival, growth and reproduction of the host, and reduce its population density. They might render the host more vulnerable to predation by making it physically weak. Parasites that feed on external surface of the host organism are known as ectoparasites. The most familiar example of this group are lice on humans and ticks on dogs. So the parasite which feed on the external surface of the host are called as ectoparasite. And Cuscuta, a parasitic plant that is commonly found on the hedge plant, has lost its chlorophyll and leaves on the course of evolution. It derives its nutrition from the host plant in which it's parasites. So Cuscuta is an example of plant parasite. Now the second category is, first category of parasites is ectoparasites, second is endoparasites. So endoparasites are those that live inside the host body at different sites like liver, kidney, lungs, red blood cells, etc. The life cycle of endoparasites are more complex because of their extreme specialization. Their morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. Brood parasitism in birds is a fascinating example of parasitism in which the parasitic bird lays its egg in the nest of the host and let the host incubate them. During the course of evolution, the egg of the parasitic bird have evolved to resemble to the host egg in size and color to reduce the chances of being detected by the host bird, so that it won't reject the egg of the parasitic bird. So the most common example is cuckoo and crow. Moving on to the fourth type of interaction, commensalism. This is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. So we have seen it's a positive interaction. positive, that is beneficial for one organism, while it is neither beneficial nor harmful for the other organism. So it's a 0, that is neutral. Another case it is a positive, that is a beneficial interaction. So as the orchid tree growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch, and another example, take the barnacle that is growing on back of a whale. So this orchid growing on the epiphyte and the barnacles, both of this benefit from the other organisms, while the mangrove branch and the elephant neither derives any benefit nor it is harmed. So this is a classic example. Another example is cattle egret and cattle grazing. So this is also an example of commensalism. The egret always forage close to where the cattle are grazing, because as the cattle moves, the vegetations also move, and it stir up and flush out the insects inside the vegetation. So it is very easy for the egrets to find them and eat it, which is otherwise difficult for the egrets to find. Another interaction is sea anemone, and that has stinging tentacles, and the clownfish. So fish gets the protection from the predators as the predators stay away from the stinging tentacles of the sea anemone. And the sea anemone, neither it does not get any benefit nor it is harmed because of the clownfish. So this is all about commensalism, and we have seen 4 examples. One is the orchid growing on a mango branch. Another is barnacles that is growing on back of whale, while another classic example is cattle egret and the grazing cattle, then sea anemone and the clownfish. Moving on to the next page, we have mutualism as another type of interaction. This interaction confers benefits on both interacting species. Lichens represent an intimate mutualistic relationship with the lichens represent an intimate mutualistic relationship between a fungus and photosynthetic algae called cyanobacteria. Similarly, the mycorrhiza is an association between fungi and the root of higher plants. The fungi help the plant in the absorption of essential nutrients from the soil, while the plant in turn provides fungi with energy-yielding carbohydrates. So mutualism is an interaction in which it's a plus-plus. It's a win-win for both the parties. So both the parties are benefited. Now, one example is lichens. It's a very important example, lichens. So it's an intimate relationship between fungus and the photosynthetic algae. And another example is mycorrhiza. The mycorrhiza is a close relationship between the fungi and the roots of the higher plants. So fungi on the help the roots to absorb the essential nutrients and other things, while the plant will provide them with energy yielding carbohydrates. Examples of mutualism are found in the plant-animal relationships also. Plant need the help of animals for pollinating their flowers and dispersing their seeds. Animals obviously have to pay fees for the service that the plants provide. Except from them, the plants offer rewards or fees in the form of pollen and nectar for pollinators, and juicy and nutritious food for the seed dispersers. But mutually beneficial system should also be safeguarded against cheaters. For example, animals that try to steal nectar without aiding pollination. The plant-animal relation often involve a co-evolution of the mutualist. That is, the evolutions of flower and its pollinator species are tightly linked with one another. In many species of fig trees, there is a tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator and the wasp. It means that if a fig tree can be pollinated, it means that the given fig tree can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and not by any other species. The female wasp uses fruit not only as oviposition means the egg-laying position, but it also uses the developing seed within the fruit for nourishing its larvae. The wasp pollinate the fig inflorescence while searching for suitable egg-laying sites. In turn, the favor of pollination in turn for the favor of pollination, the fig offers the wasp with its developing seed as a food for developing the wasp larvae. Orchids show a bewildering diversity of floral patterns, many of which have evolved to attract right pollinator insects like bees and bumblebees and ensure guaranteed pollination by it. But not all orchids offer rewards. The Mediterranean orchids offers take a note of this name, this example, offers it employs sexual deceit to get pollination done by a species of bee. So what they do is one petal of the flower bears an uncanny resemblance to the female bee in size, color and markings. So the male bee is attracted to the flower thinking it is a female bee and it pseudocopulates with the flower. During this process, the dusted pollinated pollen from the flower will be taken by the male bee to the other flower. So when the same bee pseudocopulates with another flower, it transfers the pollen grains into it and thus the pollinates the flower. Here you can see how the co-evolution operates. If the female bee's color or patterns change even slightly due to any reason of the evolution, the pollination success will be reduced unless the orchid flower also co-evolves. So here we can see two concepts. One is sexual deceit concept, that not all species species are given reward. Another case is the idea of co-evolution. If one evolves, the other species, if that doesn't evolve, then the pollination becomes difficult. So this is all about chapter 13. So more chapter will be discussed in the following session. For more related contents, do like, share and subscribe.